Oh, it's so quiet. You just sound chilled out and relaxed.
How do you maintain enough objectivity with something you care about? Because I'm like you, very emotional, and I get. It actually has kept me from getting involved in some cases. You talked a little bit about some of the tools, like breathing and checking deeply in, but like if it's a really high stakes moment, do you have ways in which you can do that, or it just depends on the thing?
Sometimes yes, and yes. I am that kid who was born uber sensitive. We're all born sensitive beings. I'm one of those kids who was born a wide open target. Everything since the time I was little hits me hard. And I happen to have experienced a lot of violence as a little girl. So for the first part of my life, I internalized that violence and I became very self-destructive, partially as a way to defend myself against the pain and suffering that I felt everywhere I turned. So being self-destructive was actually a way of numbing myself to the pain, even though I was hurting myself at the same time. So that's what I did for many years, including following the path of drug addiction as a way of self-medicating, because I didn't have tools to deal with being as sensitive as I am in such a hurting world. And then after having a lot of friends die and seeing friends who weren't dead but they might as well be, made me look in the mirror and realize I was walking dead. And I chose that I either needed to choose to be alive or choose to not be here anymore. But being in that in-between world was no longer working for me. And I wasn't exactly sure I wanted to choose being in the living world because it was really freaking painful and I kind of had enough. And it actually took me a long time to make that choice. I really struggled with it. And I finally chose, okay, I'm going to choose to really be here. And then what was funny is shortly after that choice is when I had my car wreck in 1996 where I was the designated driver and got hit by a drunk driver. And the steering wheel of the car went into my skull. And took a year of physical and cognitive therapy to recover from it. And I jokingly but seriously tell people I've always learned lessons the hard way. That's my karma this lifetime, you know? It's like I had to climb a tree to learn all my lessons, you know? And even before, all my lessons have been learned the hard way. So the universe had to shove a steering wheel into my car to steer me in a new direction in my life, you know? Because that's the way I learned. So even though I had already chosen to choose life, I was still struggling with what does that even mean to me, and just feeling at a loss. And the steering wheel of my skull really had me look at what is real value versus what is perceived value. And I want to go in search of what real value is for me. And it was interesting because I had actually had a quite successful life for having been a drug addict and everything. I mean, I was running successful businesses while I was an addict. I am a high-functioning addict. And in America's eyes, I was a success story. Born and raised very, very poor, graduated high school when I was 16, majored in business in college, co-opened a business when I was 18, ended up being in consulting in the restaurant and bar industry, doing really well at that. I was all successful and never happy. And so that steering wheel made me realize, well, I think partly it's because I'm not seeking out what is true for me. And part of the reason I hadn't done that is because being so sensitive, experiencing so much violence, not wanting to be here, choosing to follow a path of purpose, choosing to follow a path that would make me very vulnerable was very, very scary. So I didn't want to go there. But the steering wheel of my skull led me there. Said, that's where you're going, girl. Buckle in, you're going for a ride. And 2 weeks after I was released from my last doctor, I went on a road trip. Left my friends in the middle of the road trip, ended up going back to where I was living, sold everything I owned, and 5 days later was living in a tree. So it was like, once I started awakening, it was like bam, 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 bam. Be careful what you ask for. So this speaks to the part about feeling despair too, because I am so sensitive, I don't have much of an in-between mechanism. I'm either on or I'm off. When I was shut down and off, that was so highly destructive. I realized that I don't want to choose that anymore, but I don't have much of a filter for the in-between space. So I end up feeling things very deeply all the time. which is part of why I'm a cynic, because I look at what we're capable of as a human family and how far we are away from that, and it breaks my heart. And one of my defense mechanisms of a broken heart is cynicism. So, feeling as deeply as I do, I just spoke at the Jivamukti tribe gathering in New York, and my talk was on that it is in the breakdown where true power can come. That, you know, to get muscle, you actually have to break it down first. That's how you build muscle. In the yoga pose, it's through the breaking down of rigidity that flexibility can come through. In meditation, it is the breaking down of the rigidity of the mind that allows for the freedom of the mind to come through. And yet, when we start to approach life, breakdown, failure, intensity freaks us out so badly that we shut down to it, we run away from it, or we fight back to it. But what I've learned since the tree time and sense has been that there is such a profound power in being willing to completely embrace the breakdown of myself and the world. And that if I can do that instead of resist it, my strength for taking on something even bigger comes from that. And I got part of this lesson while I was in the tree, because there were times when I was in the tree where I was literally in the fetal position, sobbing, like, you know, curled up as small as I could get, like sobbing. I can't take this anymore. I had frostbite. I almost lost 6 of my toes and 5 of my fingers. I was going through the worst winter in recorded history of California. I had a company that was trying to kill me. I was literally broken on every single level. Physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Broken. And I was praying and asking for help this one point. Actually, first I was praying and asking for help, and I kept getting sent more hardships. And I was like, what kind of karma am I working on? I'm so sorry. Whatever I did, I won't do it again. Help! And then the universe said, you asked for strength, didn't you? And I was like, crap, I did. And I realized I asked for strength, so the universe was giving me opportunities to get stronger. I didn't ask for give me a timeout. Like if I had asked for a timeout, I would have got a different result. I asked for strength, and so the universe said, here's another piece of gym equipment in the form of another really intense thing you have to deal with. And then after that, again, sobbing, breaking down, being like I can't take it anymore. I think this was about the time, it still breaks my heart, but it was beyond horrifying and almost right way down from that tree. A young activist, he was 30, no, he wasn't even in his 30s, 23. His name was David Gypsy Chain. He was out in the forest with other activists, and a logger knowingly cut a tree down in their direction and ended up killing him. And I was the first person to hear about it, because for some odd reason our walkie-talkies would connect, even though as the crow flies they were about 30 miles or so away from me. We were both on the top of a mountain, and somehow our walkie-talkies connected. And this girl called in the walkie-talkie screaming and crying, Gypsy's been killed, Gypsy's been killed. And I was so devastated. I didn't think I was going to make it through that one. I was like, I can't, like, if this is what our world is, I can't. Why should I care? If this is who we are, why should I care? We're hopeless. There is no hope. We're screwed. I'm done. That kind of feeling. And then I was praying. The answer that came was, Julia, you must simply love. And again, I was like, that's so not what I want to hear right now. But as I kept hearing that message, I got the image of a tree. Imagine that. And its branches were moving like this. And as its branches were moving, I started to see the kind of stuff that comes out of petroleum smokestacks, like really scary looking stuff that it was taking in when its branches came in. And when its branches moved out, this prismatic light was coming out. And I was just kind of focusing on that, even as I was resisting it. I was going through both for a little bit. I was so angry and hurt that I didn't want a message about love to come through, but it was clearly coming through. So then I just stayed focused. And as I was watching this image, just repeating itself, I started realizing that the tree was subtly growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And I got what true love actually is. And I later was told by some Buddhist practitioners that they have the exact same process called Tonglen. Exactly. But as in all Buddhist and yoga practices, it's all been learned from the evolution wisdom of nature, which we're a part of. That's where it all comes from. So trees taught us Tonglen. Trees take in our toxins. They transform the toxins and give us life. And it is that actual process biologically that has the tree grow. And I realized it was funny because that had also come after I was doing radio shows, and a lot of them weren't friendly. They would literally call me on the radio, do an interview with me, and press a button and start a chainsaw. And that's how they would start the interview. So I had some very intense radio interviews. And I would notice myself in those moments, like whenever there would be a break, I would be thinking to myself, love in, stress out. Love in, stress out. And I realized, oh crap, I'm putting stress into the world. Damn. I can't do that. It sure feels good, but that's not what I'm committed to do. And so I realized, no, I couldn't do that. So then I was love in, love out. And then with further insight and meditation, I realized I had to go beyond that, take stress, negativity, violence, hatred, destruction in, transform it through my heart, breathe out unconditional, deep, profound love. In stress, violence, hatred, destruction, the things that rip my soul apart, breathe it in. Trust that my heart is big enough to transform it. Breathe out love. And the trees taught me that that's what they do, and that's what's possible for us. We feel sometimes like our heart can't hold anymore. And when we reach those points, if we're willing to let go, that's when our heart breaks. When our heart breaks, that means it's getting bigger. It means our capacity to love in even more difficult situations has now grown bigger. Our capacity to stand in the eye of the storm and keep rooted, yet remain flexible and bend with whatever's coming our way. We don't leave our commitment, but we don't stay rigid. We can take it. We can breathe it in. We can take that in, and our heart is big enough to take it. It is our experiences of our past that teaches us our heart isn't enough. It is the teachings of our society that we are not enough. But that experience in many senses taught me we are more than enough. But our more than enough is directly proportional to how much we're willing to let go of our beliefs, of our rigidity, of our desire to control, of our fear, and our willingness to allow our hearts to break over and over and over again as we take in that toxin, knowing that we will actually grow. And that's what's happened for me. Like every time I'm willing to do that, which to me is pretty much on a daily basis because I'm so sensitive pretty much everywhere I look, my heart breaks. I walk the streets and I see the amount of trash that's out there, and I know that used to be habitat somewhere, and it's now in the streets polluting. We destroyed a habitat and now we're polluting the planet. We're throwing away our children's future. Just that breaks my heart every single day. And I have to find a way then, instead of shutting down to it and numbing myself and being like, don't look, don't listen, la 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 la, which is what I want to do sometimes, just take it in. Then the other piece though is that it is important that my health, mental, spiritual, emotional, physical health reservoir is full. Because if we just take it in and we don't take care of that personal ecology, it depletes us until we fall apart. So whatever tools work, the yoga, the meditation, eating healthy, getting some form of exercise. Also what's helpful for me is I have certain friends who are my friends that I call when I want to be completely politically and spiritually incorrect. Because I have a Mimi in here, and if you heard what she has to say, you would be like, oh, no. But she needs to be heard sometimes, because if she's not heard, she's going to become destructive. And when she's destructive, something in me becomes destructive, and it's not pretty, and it's not healthy, and it's not helpful. So I have certain friends that I will call and say, is now a good time for me to share without edit and without you? I don't need to be fixed. I don't need to be coached. Because some people I do call for coaching. Sometimes I am ready to be coached. I know that, like my one friend I called once, I'm like, I know I have other tools in my toolbox, but the only one I can find right now is a hammer, and I want to beat the crap out of this person, so you got to help me find the other tools in my toolbox. So sometimes I need a coach. There are other times when I don't need a coach. I just need to get all that intensity out. And I give the person a warning first so that they can see if they're ready to just hold space for that. They don't need to take it on, they don't need to do anything, they just need to hold a container for me to go blah into. And if they are, I just share, unedited, exactly what I'm thinking, feeling, experiencing, blah, 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 and they just listen. And usually by the time I'm done, we're both laughing, because it really ends up being a little bit absurd, because I know enough about myself to know it's absurd, but while it's inside, it's like claws that are ripping at me. And if I can get it outside, I tell people, it's like it then can become compost. And compost can feed something beautiful. And sometimes I need someone to hold the container for me to get that compost out so that I can stir it and moisture it and get the right elements it needs to become healthy compost, instead of something that's got a disease in it that will eat something away. That help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Oh, there's a clock. Okay, good.
That's a question. So is there anything that you feel you can't take on or take in terms of media or visual stuff or imagery or news?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you asked that question. There is such a thing as too much information. Mm-hmm. And we live in a time where we're blessed and cursed with access to information, right? So the blessing is we have a capacity to help our brothers and sisters, human and non-human, around the world, sometimes with the access to information we used to have. But it's like a sponge. If you fill a sponge up with all dirty water, and then you go to wipe the counter, right? What happens? So if we fill ourselves up only with the negative things, there's no room for the positive, and then whatever we touch is going to have this negative residue all over it. I forgot, one of the things I do for income that I love doing is life coaching. And I only work with people who are committed to something beyond just making their relationship better. Although that's extremely important, and sometimes we end up working on that anyway. I choose to work with people who are really committed to doing something in the world. And those are the only kind of people who want to work with me, because my love is deep and my love is fierce. So people who choose to life coach with me want some fierce, loving support to help them kick it to the next level. And more than once in my life coaching, I have told people, I'm putting you on a media fast. And I make them go on a media fast, including NPR or Amy Goodman, or, like
CNN.
Yeah, any of those things we think are the important media, all of it, no media. And I make them do it for, depending on the person and how I think they'll respond, either a month or 40 days. In a lot of spiritual practices, 40 days is what it takes to transform something. So I like to do 40 days with people, but if people are really committed to like their calendar and they need that mark on their calendar, then I'll just stick them in a 1 month media. And it's incredible how that makes a difference for people. When they feel really stuck, it is usually that piece right there that unsticks people. So yes, absolutely, there's too much.
I mean, I asked because I remember just recently, I mean, of course, so many things have happened, but I remember seeing, I mean, out of my admitting morbid curiosity, right? Sometimes I just look at covers of papers and see what's going on in the world, what made the front page. And I saw an image of a man dragged on the street. I don't know if anyone else in here saw that cover of the New York Times. Can't remember what country it was in. But I just thought to myself, why do I need to see this? Why do I need to know this? And what can I do about it? And if there's nothing I can do about it, why am I filling my consciousness with it?
Yes.
Why am I allowing it to enter my awareness if I'm not gonna, it's the same thing with an accident. Sometimes you'll be driving and there'll be an accident and I've stopped looking because I'm not gonna stop and help.
Right.
So I guess that's where I get stuck. I know that ignorance is not bliss, but there's a preservation along with not knowing about things that can propel you to goodness.
Yes. Well, I think what you're speaking to is returning to our inherent wisdom. It's also, again, speaking of yoga, it's one of the things I love about yoga is it's taught me so much, and a dear friend of mine also, who did so much work around somatic healing, who worked with me for many years, taught me so much about how our body is one of our best teachers. And like if we really do work to really tune into our body, it will tell us things. Even so, to the point, like when I do life coaching, I don't even do it in person with people because I travel a lot and my home is in Belize and I work with people all over the world. And I do it by phone, and I can tell people sometimes when they're sharing with me, I'm like, how does your forehead feel right now? What do your shoulders feel like, front and back? I don't know, I feel a little tense. Yes, I know. Because, and then help them connect, only so that they can realize their body's communicating with them for a reason right there. And so that inherent wisdom, including the body wisdom, can tell us when we don't need that information, because we will feel a shutting down experience. It is important to know what's wrong, but it's not important to know everything that's wrong. As a matter of fact, it's destructive. One of the things I tell people is we all know we live in a world full of problems. One of the biggest problems is that we don't also know we live in a world full of solutions. The magazines and papers and televisions aren't covered with the solutions, because if everybody realized what is possible in the world, we would be way worse consumers. Yeah. I mean, that's the honest fact. It's like we feel an upset. Consumerism is an addiction. I am an addict. I speak with authority. Consumerism is an addiction. Addictions are things that we do that are self-destruct and others destructive, and we refuse to admit it. And when somebody confronts us, we say, it's not our problem, it's your problem. And we don't change until we're either forced to change or inspired to change. It is the epitome of the way we consume in our industrialized countries. We are addicts. And so they want us to be addicts because it makes certain people a lot of money. And addicts choose addiction just like I chose drugs, because I had certain voids in me, certain pains in me that I didn't know how to heal, and so I chose drugs. A lot of people choose consuming. Even, bless our hearts, in the yoga spiritual community, it's like, well, if I just get one more mandala and one more prayer beads and one more this and one more that, and oh, now I'll go get that, and then I'll have my space. It doesn't mean certain of those things aren't helpful in our practice or in our journey, but many people I see are just constantly getting the next latest groovy spiritual thing, still trying to fill something. So with this consumerism, they want us to feel overwhelmed, frightened, sad, etc., because it makes us very good consumers. And that's why we see a lot of that and not a lot of, look at all the good that happened in your neighborhood today. We just wouldn't be as inspired to buy as much stuff we don't need. So the body wisdom can help us know where and when to search out things, even though we know it might be painful, and when and where it's inappropriate. Because we will feel the body starting to shut completely down, the overwhelm to happen, the desire to curl back in, and I'm just going to take care of me and what's right around me and hope the rest of the world is okay. That feeling, that constrictive feeling, means we've taken in too much negativity. The expansion feeling is one where I know this might hurt, I know this might be intense, but I'm ready to take it on. We'll feel more open in our chest and in our head. We'll just feel a natural opening there. It's like, okay, I can take this right now. So that's what I would share in that realm. It's like start, if you're not already, start tapping into the body wisdom. It's a powerful teacher and guide. See what it's showing you. You can even try it as an experiment on an idea you're interested in, and you're interested in going into service in that direction. Think your way there and start noticing what's happening in your body. Now you might feel constricted at first because you're afraid. But wherever you're feeling the constriction, breathe into it and ask it what it's there to teach you. Because oftentimes constriction can lead to expansion through that inquiry journey. The constriction is the immediate self-defense mechanism to something's overwhelming, frightening, intense, whatever. And the exploration into it, have a good evening.
Thank you.
The exploration into it can lead us to expansion, because it can help us uncover why we're holding ourselves back in the face of fear or overwhelm. Fear or overwhelm can be a great teacher. It can teach us many things. People tell me all the time, you're so courageous, aren't you ever afraid? I'm like, I'm afraid all the time. That's why you think I'm courageous. Courage doesn't happen in the space of no fear. Courage can only happen when you're afraid and you choose to act anyway. If you're not afraid, you don't need any courage. It's not necessary, right? And I love to remind people too that the root word for courage is coeur, from the French. It means heart. Every time you face fear, overwhelm, apathy, anger, frustration, and you choose to think, speak, or act out of love anyway, you just had a courageous act. That's the actual definition of courage. So the exploration of the body wisdom, if you're thinking about a concept you want to work on, mental health, whatever the issue is, and you delve into it, if at first you feel contraction, it's just there to teach you something. So breathe into it and explore and say, why are you feeling constricted? What is it that you're afraid of? Why am I afraid of that? that little inquiry will actually take you on a journey that it might tell you at the end of that inquiry, now's not the appropriate time. Sometimes that's the truth. When I was in the tree and I was praying when I should calm down, I kept getting the answer, now is a good time, it's not the right time. So it's like sometimes something is calling us, but maybe it's not the right time. Or maybe it is the right time. We just have to recognize what blocks we've had in the way, what we've meant fear to mean, and how that holds us back. So that's how I deal with things like that. And I very rarely will look at the cover of a magazine, a newspaper, any of that, because I can't be careful about what information I'm taking in. So when I choose to seek out information that I know might be painful to me, I'm a little more thoughtful about what am I looking to find out about and what is the best way for me to find out about it, so that I don't get overexposed to a lot of the things that I can do nothing about that makes me feel hopeless because humanity can be so destructive. Does that help?
Totally.
Yeah.
I have a question when you were talking about consumerism. How do you make decisions, like on a daily basis, about things that you're going to buy or consume, or other than food, like clothing, or I don't know, things you use on a daily basis? Because it's a you get bombarded and you start thinking, I mean, I work in the fashion industry, so I'm constantly thinking of where these things are made and unfair conditions, and so can you give an example on how you make decisions?
Sure. The first thing, you'll notice in a lot of my answers, I go first to the being, then to the doing. Because in a production-driven society, we're always thinking about what am I supposed to do, or what should I do, or what shouldn't I do. And it's part of why we live our lives backwards. Like, I offer, and this might be beneficial to some of you, I sometimes forget to mention, I offer an online teleconference course called What's Your Tree? And it helps people uncover your symbolic tree. And it has a lot of these themes we've talked about tonight, but put into practice and in community, even though it's a virtual community with other people. And the purpose of What's Your Tree is on two levels. Number one is to help you uncover and or clarify what your core purpose of being is. And who our core purpose of being is never changes. It doesn't mean you're stuck in a jail. It just means it is so authentically you that it's just not going to change. It is the essence of who you are. Everything else changes. That's a natural part of life. But the essence, the seed of who we are is always there, even as we become a tree. We don't think we're the seed anymore. The seed is still there. And then the next layer of purpose is the doing, which is the tree. What are the various ways of expressing our core essence of being? So that's a lot of times why I have long answers, because I always go to the being part of the answer first, and then I go to the doing part. So the being part of the answer to your question, like how do you make choices, is first is to recognize that we don't live in a perfect world, and it is absolutely impossible to make a perfect choice. Because that striving to try and do it right will drive you bananas. It will kill off our soul, kill off our joy and our zest for life, because it is impossible to make a perfect choice in today's world. I wish it was possible. If it was, I would clearly go to any length to make the perfect choice. There's no such thing. It's like I recognize that to travel and come to events, I'm taking resources from the earth. Pretty drastic resources. I have struggled with that in all the years I've been traveling. I still haven't quite come to balance with it. What I've done to try and mitigate it is I don't go out on the road for just one event. I assess how much carbon pollution I create, and I make donations to a few different organizations that work on ways of helping offset carbons, but in really cool ways. Like I invest in Native Energy, which is a majority Native-owned company that invests in wind farms on Native land. They invest in a few different things, but a lot of it is on Native land, and the majority of the shareholders are Native people. And then I invest in another project that creates food forests all over the world, so that they're actually bringing forests back and storing carbon and also feeding people. So I do things like that, but again, it's still not perfect, right? I don't have a crystal ball that tells me if I'm causing more harm or more good by coming on the road. I just have to try and do the best I can and pray that I'm making the right choices. So when that comes to like what I buy and things like that, again, I just recognize there's no perfect choice. When I recognize that and I can let go of the judgment, it frees me up to say, well, what is the best choice I can make in this moment? It might not be perfect. What is the best choice I can make? So when it comes to clothes, 90% of everything I own is from thrift stores. You know, it's sure. these pants were given to me as a gift. You know, like a majority, whether it was from thrift stores or from clothing swap parties and things like that. When it comes to food, I'm a joyous vegan, and I'm also a joyous vegan who talks to vegans and confronts them about the amount of packaged goods that vegans start relying upon and how inappropriate and destructive that is, especially considering packaging comes from resources that used to be habitat for animals. So if you're destroying their habitat, technically you're killing animals even as you call yourself a vegan, so might want to check yourself. You know, people don't like to hear that. And so again, it's just from love, it's not from judgment. I'm just like, love has me think that deeply into every choice. So I'm a joyous vegan, and I choose to eat as much local as I can, support local businesses every time I can. I now live in a place where I'm trying to grow my own food. Even if you live in the city, every windowsill can be turned into food production. So it's like they're little things, those are the ways I think. I also remind people that the model is reduce, reuse, recycle. It's not recycle, recycle, recycle. And actually very large corporations are the ones who funded the recycling campaign and made it prevalent in people's thoughts and made people think about recycling. Why? Because if you can recycle all you want, that means you can buy all you want, right? They actually wanted us to think about recycling because then we could keep consuming and not feel bad about it. So the model is reduce, reuse, recycle. And I added two more and eventually 3 more words, which is respect, rethink, reduce, reuse, recycle, rejoice. And rejoice, I added it the last time because we forget to like celebrate and like honor the good in life sometimes. We get so focused on what's not working, we forget to rejoice at all the miracles that happen, including every time we take a breath, a miracle just happens. You know, like technically every time I take a breath, I should be going, yeah, another one just happened. You know, like it's a miracle. It's amazing. So I added respect and rethink because if we respect the life that we're connected to, if we feel that deep connection, we automatically begin to rethink our choices. Again, it gets it off the granola year, the now to-do list and gets it into a joyful expression of like, how can I rethink it? I'm so glad you guys are laughing because it's so important. Joy in humor is crucial. And once I rethink it, I automatically start to reduce. So I say, I mean, I've always been this way because my family was so poor. We were accidental ecologists growing up. It's like, you know, you just reuse everything you can reuse. We had like frozen juice cans because that's what we were given at the government food bank. And I was so not a girly girl, but I had Barbie dolls only because I was also into fashion and I was into interior design because I'm an artist by nature. So they were just like perfect little things to practice art on, interior design and fashion design. So like we made little chairs out of the juice cans and we made lamps out of straws that I found on the ground with other little things. Like, you know, like every little piece of trash got turned into something else. So that's kind of my model that I use for myself in any choice. Is there a way that I can reduce first? Asking myself in a moment when I'm feeling an impulse buy, because I have them too. It's everywhere. Ooh, that's pretty. My passion is food. Every new food, any new like little tool or gadget that comes up for food, I'm like, ooh, that's awfully nice. I might need that. You know, like part of the role for buying things is take a mindful breath. Actually, even taking one mindful breath and asking myself, do I really need this? Even that one simple act sometimes keeps me from buying something. Even if I really like it, I just realize I don't really need it. Maybe it's going to be cool for like a minute or a day or something, and then it's going to like go in the back with everything else. So that's kind of the way I employ it. Taking a deep mindful breath when I feel drawn to buying something, asking myself, do I really need this? Sometimes the answer is no, I don't really need this, but I really, really, really want it, and I haven't bought anything I really, really, really wanted for a long time. Okay, I'm going to buy it this time. But even then, I've come to that choice more consciously, and therefore I'm more likely to appreciate it and make it last a lot longer. And then reusing and recycling. And I do my best to, I mean, my organization, when I had it, we produced an event called We the Planet. And I chose to co-create that event because I told people I'm tired of going to Earth Day events where we could help the Earth more by staying home. The amount of trash that was being produced. You know, you're all laughing and you know. It's like, oh my God. If this is the best we have to offer, we're screwed. And I also wanted to create an event that would bring all kinds of people together and show what caring for the earth was versus just preaching about it. So we produced the We the Planet festivals. We produced 2 and then trained all these people who are now doing green event production all over the country. This was almost not happening before we started doing these events, before we did these events. We held the event in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. We had to negotiate with the city to do it. In normal events, they require 1 commercial-sized dumpster per 1,000 people. We knew we were going to have about 10,000 people come to the event, so that would have meant we had to have 10 dumpsters. We said we're not going to produce that much trash. We're not even going to produce that much recycling because we're not even going to create waste, because recycling is still waste. It's going to get turned into something else, but it is still waste. Energy and resources went into it. More energy and resources are going to be needed to transform it. It is still part of a waste stream. So we're not even going to need a bunch of recycling containers. So we negotiated with them. Finally, they agreed to 7. We're like, oh, great. So we had at least 7 dumpsters, even though we knew we didn't need them. We had all of our energy powered by off-grid solar, biodiesel, all from waste oil generators, etc. And we had very big celebrities: Alanis Morissette, Cake, The Coup, Flea from the Chili Peppers, like all kinds of people. Bonnie Raitt, Joan Baez. No, Joan didn't make it to that one. Bonnie and Joan made it to our second one. I'm forgetting the name of all.
Moby?
No, not Moby. I tried to get Moby, but Moby was too in his own world, so he didn't come. But it was great because also I invited some celebrity musicians who were doing tours at the time and said, you guys don't even have to come. I'm not asking you to come and perform or do anything. I just want you to come and see what we're about to do because I want you to do at least some part of it. So I had some of them there just to witness it, and Lollapalooza changed as a result. Warped Tour changed as a result. A whole bunch of things changed. Not the whole thing, but a bunch of what they were doing as a result of coming. So at the end of our festival, I had someone walk around with a box that held a 12 case of beer in it. And as they walked around the park, 10 minutes after 10,000 people left, they came back and that box wasn't even completely full of trash. 10,000 people, 10 minutes after they left. The park was cleaner than we got there because it was an open to the public park, so there was trash there when we got there. 10 minutes after 10,000 people left, there was less than 1 box of trash. We filled less than 1/4 of a dumpster of trash. 10,000 people, an all-day music festival, less than 1/4 of a dumpster of trash. Even our recycling bins were low. Why? Because I'm not going to support corporations who steal water from indigenous peoples and from sacred places on the planet, or, clean up city water and stick it in a bottle. Either way, I don't care whether it's coming from a spring or whether it's coming from city water that's been sanitized. Either one is destructive, especially because every plastic bottle, every single plastic single-serving bottle, a minimum, depending on where it comes from, it is a minimum of 8 bottles of water that went into making that bottle and transporting that bottle. So for every 1 single-serving bottle of water that we would drink, even if we recycle it, we just stole 7 bottles of water from somewhere else, from someone else, from something else, every single time. So we didn't have recyclable water bottles. We invited people to bring their own utensils, containers, everything. If they did, they got a discount coupon to use at the food vendors. But if they didn't, they could purchase a water bottle from us. It was made out of plastic. It was made out of 100% recycled plastic. And it was filled for $2.50, they could get that. And then after that, you go and we had filters on hoses with a water filter off the end of it, so you didn't just have to go up to a hose. So it was a hose connected to a water filter with those fancy little spigots on the top, and you could refill your water bottle for free for the rest of the day. So even our recycling numbers were low because we thought of things like that. So that's just another fun example of we were a staff of 6. We are a non-profit of 6. And we certainly had great volunteers and a couple other people we hired for the event production day. But if a non-profit of 6 people can pull off the greenest event ever done in the country with high-level celebrities and stuff, anything is possible for any of us, which is part of why we did it, is to show people anything is possible. So sorry again, it's a long answer, but I shared that story only hopefully to inspire you to think outside the box. Like, where can I creatively shift the way I've become a part of consumer culture and just lighten my footprint, but with joy instead of judgment.
This might be a really stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Good.
It seems like being health conscious, eating organic, raw, local, seasonal, not using plastic, all the things you're talking about could be so awesome if that could make money, because then everyone would be behind it. But the fact that plastic companies, aluminum, paper goods, multi-million dollar industries, like, why can't we change? Why can't there be a grassroots change in what big business looks like? Why can't it be better for the planet, and then people make money and the planet?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
How do we do that?
Well, it's not a stupid question, and as a matter of fact, it's a great question, because the first way we could do it is go back and look at the word economics. I love talking about this. I majored in business in college. I like this stuff. Economics. The root word for economics comes from eikos, which means house or home. Nomics comes from nome, which means to steward or care for. Economics, in its literal translation, means to care for or steward one's home or place. It was designed that we created a form of energy exchange based on how well we were taking care of each other and everything that made up home. What happened was we allowed economics to be stolen by capitalism. So we have all these economic professors in universities that are teaching capitalism. Right. We have economic specialist advisors to the president who are capitalist advisors. I'm like, the first thing we do is start mandating that they call themselves what they are. They're not economic professors at all.
Well, this is like the perfect segue. My question is following your question, which is, you are such a visionary and great communication skills. Would you ever consider being an advisor in government or working within a corporate structure as a voice for totally radical priorities?
I'll answer that one after this one. Just don't let me forget it. Okay. So, the economics piece, right? True economics would be that the things that are healthy and good for us are what gets funded. And I tell people we can see when we become that everything that's good for us and healthy for us, our bodies, our communities, our world, and our planet is called the alternative. Alternative food, alternative nutrition, alternative healthcare, alternative jobs, alternative energy. Like everything that's actually good for us is called the alternative. Why? Why? Because our tax dollars funded the infrastructure for everything that's bad for us, number one. We've asked, well, why is it so more expensive to do the right thing? Because the right thing has not been funded with our tax dollars. You don't realize how much of your money has actually gone into all the stuff that's cheap and better, right? A huge amount of our tax dollars has been and continues to go into the structures that support the choices that are bad for us. Second of all, we allowed for corporations to fully fund our government. This last election was, I heard, like the whole, not just the presidential election, but the whole election overall was somewhere like around $6 billion. In a $6 billion election, what is good for us will never be a priority, because it is the people who earn income off of exploiting the planet. Capitalism is to aggregate and exploit your people, your place, your home. Economics is to protect your people, your place, your home, to care for. So in that system, what is good for us will never rise up. So my answer to that then is, on the grassroots level, I believe the change is going to happen when people stop looking at the presidency. Why? Because we put all this energy and focus into like presidential politics, and people don't know who's on their board of educators. They don't know who's on their city commissioners. They don't know who's on their county planners. They might remember that they voted for them at the moment because they seemed the right candidate, and that was the last of their involvement. If we don't know who's involved in making the decisions that impact us on the most basic of level, how do we think we're ever going to change the national conversation? So that's number one. I believe we have to really focus on and build the movement again, when we actually get involved and take back our local politics. We actually have the possibility of doing that. We don't have the possibility to buy a $6 billion president. As a matter of fact, we thought we did, and look at what Obama's done. We thought that grassroots would do it, and look at how much he's sold out. He's in many ways, in some ways he's been awesome, in many ways he's been worse than Bush, because people are letting him off of some pretty horrendous things, because at least he isn't Bush, because at least he isn't Republican, because he has done some things for our gay community, he has done some things for a couple of sectors of the environment. Like, he's done some things that are important, but they're kind of like, look at this, don't look behind the curtain, look at this, don't look behind the curtain. So he is a perfect example of how focusing on the top will never get us where we need to be. We don't have that kind of influence, especially because we allowed for laws we passed that allow for corporations to act like people and do and fund whatever they want. The other piece is, it's why it's so important to build community resilience. I tell people the best thing about unsustainability is that it's unsustainable. Thank goodness, right? That means at some point it has to end. Like, that is the best part of what's unsustainable. Because it's unsustainable, it's going to have to end. The sad thing is who and what is being devastated as that system collapses. That's what breaks our heart, because really beautiful beings of all different manifestations are suffering as this unsustainable system is rising and collapsing. And that's what gets overwhelming. But what we can do is if we look at that collapse as compost, we can start building right now. What would it look like as that collapses? It will collapse because it has to. And if we start building it now, when the collapse happens, it's a lot less hard for us to have resiliency because we'll have already built it. So in other words, that means community co-ops, community gardens, all these things that are already starting to happen that are about local, local, local. Look for, cultivate, and support everything local that we possibly can, because that is the only other way we have of dealing with these massive corporations and their power. Because we can't operate at that level. We can work from the ground up, and as that system collapses, we'll continue growing. Things. I mean, we can even look to Cuba. I've been to Cuba. It's not everything gets portrayed to be in the left, and it's not everything that gets portrayed to be in the right. It's somewhere in the middle. But you know, they were able to make it through a cutoff of petroleum. We would not do well as a country if that happened to us. They were able to not only survive it, but in many ways to thrive it, because the immediate response was go local. Like they started putting community little gardens and farms I forget, but there actually was a mandate that every so many blocks or square feet, I forget the exact number, there had to be a garden. And you know, to this day you go and you see people using hand push, people powered little lawnmowers or their machetes. Like everything just went local, because that was the way to deal with petroleum, because petroleum allows us to behave in a non-local manner. It's a big part of what allows us to behave in a non-local manner. And they were able to survive what would throw this country into total chaos by going local. So instead of waiting for the chaos to happen, let's just go local now. And that way, as the crumbling happens, it can be compost to feed what we're already doing.
I'm actually so riveted by your stories of your experience in the tree, and now you're answering all these questions that are very, very current. And I'm wondering, like, I haven't read your book, and I'm just curious because you have all these like lofty breakthroughs in the heavens, and then you're speaking about these like very contemporary problems and how you're addressing them. And like, I'm just wondering what your experience was like when you put your feet on the ground, like landed, and then that immediate experience and how you move forward after having all these like epiphanies. It's
a great question, because when I was getting interviewed in the tree, people kept saying, "Oh, these sound like such great ideas, but you're living in a tree. What about when you come down to reality?" And then, they didn't realize that in some ways I was having a more hardcore reality experience than they would in their nice, perfect little homes with air conditioning or heating as they needed, etc. You know, an ability to go to the grocery store when you're hungry. You know, simple things like that. Turn on a faucet and have water come out. Like in many ways, my reality was way more hardcore than theirs. But I understood what they were saying, but I just knew inside of me that what I was getting was real. It wasn't just this lofty experience, partly because a lot of the lessons I was getting was through some hardcore reality. But then the day that I was coming down, I attached myself to the rope to rappel down, and I literally collapsed in this part of Luna that I used to hang out in all the time. The experience was so brutal and intense on so many levels that Luna for me became a feminine energy. Not to say that Luna is male or female, but it became a feminine energy because I deeply needed that. I needed a soft something. And also a lot of the branches would curve up in such a way that I would kind of like hug up into them, you know, just to like get something that felt like a hug, something that held me in this intense experience. And that day as I hooked on, I had this massive like hit of overwhelm, and I collapsed down into one of my favorite little spots, and I started sobbing. I was like, Luna, what? And I literally was talking to Luna, what if they're right? What if everything I learned isn't really real down there? And I'm such a different person now than I was when I came up. And how am I going to deal with this world? Like, just the struggle of what most people go through from 23 to 25 and what I went through from 23 to 25. And now I'm entering this world again, and how am I going to be this me in this world? And all of that stuff started hitting me. I was sobbing. I was like, what if I screw up? All of those things. And Luna told me, and when Luna communicated with me, it wasn't like a voice in my head, it was more like a knowing that would come inside me. And Luna communicated to me, anytime you need me, Julia, just touch your heart, because that's where I'm always going to be. And I go there and I start to cry, because it's always been true. When I feel, even to this day, when I feel lost from those lessons, when I feel like I want to give up on those lessons and I touch my heart, bam, I'm right back there, and it helps me bring it alive again. So I rappelled down into the ground, and I touched the ground, and I collapsed. And people thought I collapsed because I wouldn't have muscle strength, but it wasn't that. It was just the energy of it was so overwhelming. I literally felt like I was getting electrocuted. When I was a little girl, I was accidentally electrocuted, so I know what I'm talking about. It felt like I was being electrocuted, like that electric-y zingy, like everywhere. And so I collapsed to the ground, and I was sobbing. I was like, we did it, oh my God. But I was feeling like all of these emotions as well. I was feeling joy that we did do it. We did something that had never been done before. We did something the corporation said they would never agree to. We did it. We saved this tree, we saved the grove, but then I was also sobbing out of grief. I was leaving the best friend and the best teacher I'd ever had in my life. I was leaving to go back into a world that felt completely foreign and alien to me. And I was completely raw and open and vulnerable. Like, how am I going to process this? And then it was funny because they had brought cars up because they were concerned I wouldn't be able to walk, and I told them there is no way I'm going to get in a car. I told her, I said, bring me a piece of scrap cardboard from some recycling box somewhere, because if I have to, I'll scoot down on my butt, but I'm not getting in a car. But all I needed was a staff, because living in a tree, your center of gravity moves up because you more use your upper body for strength and your bottom part of your body for balance and maneuverability. So my center of gravity was up, but my muscles were fine. So I had just a broken branch from one of the storms that I picked up and used that to walk all the way back down the mountain. I walked barefoot. They kept asking me to put on shoes. I said no. I was so in another world that I didn't realize I had walked a full blood blister this big into my foot all the way until it popped. And I didn't know until my friend who was walking with me, one of my amazing ground support team members, who's like my brother to this day, he said, Julia, there's a trail of blood behind you. And I was like, what? And I looked down, and that's how in another world I was. Like, normally you feel a blood blister when it's this small. I had walked one until it gotten like covered my entire heel and then burst open, and I didn't even feel it. So then I have to walk down, and if you read the book, you see there's a picture of me in the back where I just look like I'm an alien from another planet. My eyes are this big, and I'm like, and I have my little stick in my hand. I have my rain jacket. I literally look like, whoa. And what you don't know is what's on the other side of the picture is like 300 media people. Because everybody wanted to come up to the tree, and I was very, very careful of who I allowed to be there for that moment. It was just too much to have everybody and their brother and auntie up there. So, but I had to, my commitment was to, continue the truth about this experience and about the fact that the forests aren't all saved just because I came down. We saved this one area, there's more work to be done. So I walked down the hill into that. And then from there, I was blessed to go to a cabin just for the night. And the next morning I got on a plane and came here to New York City. So after 2 years and 8 days of not being on the ground. Yes.
Still not on the ground.
Like, after all, not walking, not experiencing shopping, anything, 36 hours after I came down from the tree, I was in New York City. And the reason I came here was because this is where live media options internationally was possible. And I knew that if I didn't take this one last opportunity to tell the story from our perspective, the media was going to basically go, the girl who is forever known as the girl who lived in the tree, which is how they ended every interview with me, by the way. Well, if anything, she will always be known as the girl who lived in the tree. But I knew that if I didn't come into the live media, they would basically be like, she will always be known as the girl who lived in the tree, the forests are saved, click to commercial, everybody go back to shopping. And I did not want that to be the final chapter of the story. So I just dug in deep, got on the plane, had a complete meltdown, had to find clothes to wear to the media. Luckily, there was this amazing reporter for Elle magazine who had come into the tree while I was there, who lived in New York City. She let me raid her closet because I had no clothes appropriate to go on international media. People listen with their eyes first. So if I had gone into this media wearing my woolly and my raincoat and all that stuff, I would have been the hippie chick from the tree. I wanted to show up where they didn't listen with their eyes first, where I just blended in so they would hear what I have to say, especially because I only have 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes. So bless her heart, I don't remember her name, but she was reporting for Elle magazine. She let me raid her closet and get some clothes to wear on international media. I went and did the media, gave her clothes back, wrote the epilogue to the book, and then had some meetings. And it was 6 months later before I started to process what had happened. And because I am an addict, if I'm not careful, I fall easily into addiction. And what happened was I noticed that I was drinking myself to sleep every night. Like, I'm the kind of person who still occasionally enjoys like a glass of red wine. I can't help it, I love it. It's quarter Italian, I feel all Italian. I just love a glass of red wine. But I am the kind of addict who, if I'm careful, I can do that and I'm fine. I don't need to binge, I don't need to go out of control. But I noticed that I was drinking myself to sleep every night. So after about a week or so of that, it was my wake-up call. I'm like, what am I doing? And I realized what happened was because things happened so fast, I had no opportunity to process the intensity of what I'd been through. And so I was self-medicating with alcohol because it was wanting to come up. And I hadn't given it the chance to come up. So about 6 months later, I went through the process of grieving, of breathing into and creating a transition because I really hadn't had one. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
How is Luna?
Luna's doing great. A year after I came down, for those of you who don't know, a year after I came down, somebody went up and attacked the tree with a chainsaw, cutting through 2/3 of the tree, expecting that the tree would die. A guy who had been my friend since before the tree days, who had gotten involved in activism for the forest when he heard that he was one of my friends who called me Butterfly before I was known as Butterfly. It's been part of my name my whole life. And he heard about Julia Butterfly in a tree, and he was like, there can only be one Julia Butterfly in a tree. And he came out to California, and sure enough, it was me. And he got a hold of me, and he ended up getting involved in activism. And he had gone up on Thanksgiving Day to give thanks to Luna for what had brought him in his life, and he found Luna cut. And what was amazing is the most incredible group of people came together to save Luna's life. Native American healers, structural engineers, biologists, treetop canopy experts, and even Pacific Lumber employees, Pacific Lumber at the time had a metal shop. And these employees ended up coming in overtime on their own time. And what they ended up making was, there was this whole group of people standing around this cut trying to figure out what to do because the winter storms were just about to arrive. And so with a cut that deep, the biggest threat is the wind shear with all the branches at the top. And someone, I'm not sure who, because I wasn't there at the moment, I was on the East Coast visiting family for Thanksgiving when I got the call that it happened. So before I could even get back, this group had come together. And someone was looking at it and said, this tree needs butterfly bandages. You know, like the stitches you can do without getting stitches, right? They just had, this tree needs butterfly bandages. And so Pacific Lumber employees were actually part of the healing, some of the employees were actually part of the team that saved Luna's life because they went into the metal shop and created butterfly bandages to go around the cut of the tree. And when they were asked why they did it, they basically said, because although we don't agree with everything Julia believes, we respect what she did. She never called us names. She never attacked or belittled. She always dealt with us with respect. And we believe when an agreement is come to and respected is upheld in respect. And we want people to know that whoever did this does not represent all of us. And part of what's so powerful about this is that, you know, symbols are oftentimes attacked for what they stand for. In New York City, you know it all too well. The Twin Towers were attacked for a very specific reason of what they stand for. The Pentagon was attacked that day for what it stands for. But oftentimes, if not always the case, when something is attacked for what it stands for grows stronger. We see after September 11, the towers represented wealth in the world. What did Bush respond? America needs to go back to shopping. They created all kinds of incentives for people to deal with their pain by shopping. They actually created incentives after that to get people out shopping. The Pentagon was attacked. What was the result? Military globalization became even stronger. Interesting enough, Luna was attacked for what Luna stands for, but what Luna stands for became stronger because Luna stands for the power of diversity coming together. The power, this is what forests stand for, but also even that action. Part of the reason I was able to negotiate with the company was that I started becoming friends with and working with the United Steelworkers of America. They were on strike at Kaiser Aluminum. Kaiser Aluminum was bought out by the same company that bought out Pacific Lumber, and they started treating their employees the exact same way they started treating the forest. So we had this opportunity to bond with hippie tree huggers and hardcore steelworkers. So and they negotiated with the corporation when the corporation was refusing to negotiate with me. They went in and negotiated on my behalf. So the whole tree sit was about the power of diversity coming together for a common cause. So even though the tree was attacked, what it stands for grew stronger. All these people came together. They expected 2/3 of the tree to be dead within 5 years. It has now been over, 13 years since I've been down. So it's been 12 years since it happened. The only dieback is at the very, very, very tippy top of the tree, which is completely exposed. There's nothing else taller than where Luna stands. And not only that, but the tree is completely covered on all sides with new growth every spring. So even the side that has no capacity to draw up nutrients or water anymore, with a cut that deep, the veins that it uses to pull up nutrients and water no longer work, and yet still even on that side it's covered in new growth. So miracles happen. Oh, that's right. It was about politics and corporations.
I understand your view is ground up, and so I'm guessing you would never work in politics.
Well, it's not just that. But number one, I am clear that my gifts are not in politics. Like you were asking earlier, is there certain times when you say no to things? People ask me all the time, when are you going to run for politics? And I always tell them, what did I do to make you hate me so much? Because I'm just clear that that's not my calling. There's certain people are, and they are very effective there. Bless the hearts of the people who are in politics, who are fighting the good fight, who are holding on to the ember for all of us with the winds of corruption trying to blow it out all the time. Bless their hearts. And part of the reason they're able to do it is because it's their calling. It's not my calling. I would get blown to bits. It would suck my soul dry. I would be highly good at agitating in the beginning. I'd create a ruckus. I might create a little bit of change, and in a very short period of time, I'd be depleted and mean and not a good person. In corporations, I actually have worked within some corporate structures. But with a lot of corporations, they look to work with someone like me so they can make themselves look like they're greenwashing. So the only time I've done anything with corporations is when they agree that the work they're going to do with me, it's not going to be advertised anywhere. It's in a contract. It says I will sue them and they will lose 3 times the damage if they try and use me in any form of advertising or marketing whatsoever. Because that's what most of them want me for. The ones who are willing to work with me anyway do have, it's not the corporation, but there's usually 1 or more people inside who want to be a champion for change. And my job is to get in there with them and partner with them and try and help them move their goals forward within a corporation.
I have another question too, if I could ask. I thought you have an artist nature, and for me, I'm an artist also. There's a real pendulum that swings between going in and making, and then going out and showing it, or marketing it, or whatever, the in and the out. And I was wondering, what's your internal fuel? I know you said you do yoga and you meditate, but do you go into lengthy meditations, or do you what do you do to replenish?
Being in non-human constructed world is crucial for me. So what that means for me, part of why I moved to Belize. I mean, part of why I moved to Belize is I have some intense physical challenges that have become worse over time. Like I live with an inhaler. I have a degenerative bone disease in my hips that is 10 years overdue for a hip replacement. I've had multiple injuries that in the cold like this here hurts so badly. So I finally chose to move somewhere where I wouldn't have to struggle just to get by. Like I don't need my inhaler when I live next to the sea in the warmth. And my pain level goes, like when I'm in a city like this and temperature like this, I'm managing 6 to 7 out of 10 pain all day long. That's what I'm processing even today. When I get there, it goes down to like a 2. So I finally chose, I'm going to move myself somewhere where my personal health reservoir can fill up so that when I go out and do the work, I'm coming from a healthier place versus a depleted place. But also what that means for me is like swimming in the sea, I lose myself. I work out so much stuff without even meaning to when I'm out there swimming. Like I'll go out for a swim and I'll come back and I'll have solved 3 problems, you know, and not even intended to. I'll just have the ahas I need. I come back, I write it down, I get it done. I'm like, woohoo! So that's a big one for me. Also, from the time I was a little bitty girl, for some reason I've been drawn to food. And for me, making healthy, delicious, vegan versions of people's unhealthy food choices brings me so much joy. And it's a creative process, but it's also something that fills up my reservoir. So I can tell when I haven't had enough opportunities for that because I started getting grumpy. It's so funny, but I literally become grumpy if I don't have enough opportunities to make food for people. And it's not just for myself. Like there's something in me that needs to make it for other people because there's something about when you eat something yummy on your own, that's one thing, but when you're eating something yummy with somebody else, if you take a bite, you can go, it just tastes better. It all of a sudden had another layer of flavor that wasn't there before. So that's a big one for me. What else? I think those are honestly the other things I mentioned. I think those are 2 biggest things, like having real time in other than human constructed nature. Like I recognize that humans are a part of nature. That's why I try and say other than human constructed. It's like I do my best not to separate us from this earth of which we're a part, but there is something powerful for me about being in places that haven't had human construction so that I can just dissolve into the water or into the experience. Yeah, thank you. So I see we're up on time. A couple of things, and I'm happy to stick around if anyone was too shy to say or ask something in a group. I'm happy to give you some personal time. Speaking of artistry and stuff, this is a book that I self-published because I can't have a contract because of my refusing to give the IRS money. It's called Becoming. It's got poetry, artwork, short stories, and photographs, mostly from my time in the tree, but also some since my time down. All my books, of course, are printed on 100% post-consumer waste, no chlorine bleach, all soy-based inks. I have a few of those. I have only 2 left of the Legacy of Luna that are hard copy. Hard copy isn't even in print anymore. So it's just, I have like 2 more in a storage unit. This is the last of 4 that I have anyway. So if somebody's interested in either one of these is 25 and this is 15, including tax and everything else. So that's that. The other thing is a reminder about what's your tree. If you're interested in being a part of a community process with very real practical tools on how to uncover and clarify the being part of purpose and the doing part of purpose, it also helps you uncover where your blocks might be. So again, all it really does is help illuminate what you already know, but is somehow held from your sight, which when we have a process, that's what helps us do. Like, I really know that everything we need to know is already within us in the world we're part of. We just have blocks to it from our past, from whatever toxins are entering us now through our environment, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So there's just blocks. So this is a process if you feel called to it. You can either go to my website, juliebutterfly.com, or if you want to go to and link to it there, or you can just go directly to the site, which is whatsyourtree.org. Another great thing is I'm an ambassador for a project called the Pollination Project. Their commitment is to give away $1,000 a day. They are looking for people who want to launch projects that are about making our world and our planet a healthier, more beautiful, sacred place. They are particularly interested in people who are looking at the convergence between people, planet. They are very interested in people who are looking at making sure that we're addressing the underlying issues as not just a band-aid to a problem. But all of their description on what they're looking for, etc., is on their website. So it's, I believe it's the pollinationproject.org. But if you just Google Pollination Project, or you can go to I posted it today, Julia Butterfly Hill on Facebook. I posted the link there today, so it would pull up automatically. I'm sorry I don't have it in the exact website in my brain. It's too late, too much has happened today, it's fuzzy. But anyway, if you are interested in it, or if you know somebody else who's interested in it, they're actively asking, send them applications. And it's not a huge process like most grant applications are. They're looking to fund change agents, they're looking to pollinate. And it is awesome to have a relatively easy way to access $1,000. Like, it's worth the effort. And I love being their ambassador because, again, I love getting green energy to good causes. So I think that's everything that I have logistically. I thank you both.
Thank you.
For making time. Thank you all again for sharing the sacred gift of your time. I feel really blessed to have spent time with you. I will stay right here in case you want to book or you just want to chat with me, and otherwise have a blessed evening and a blessed night.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.